years. So otherwise, we've been right around that mark, I would say, of the 800, 850,000. So you guys have any questions for us, I guess?
So the formal agreement we're currently operating on, do we have a formal agreement?
Currently, there's a JPA that says that City of Belfield, Stark County will both pay 1/3 of one paramedic's salary and benefits.
Okay.
So this year's City of Belfield did pay. Stark County has not paid yet, and I look back in my emails and it looks like it went to a previous employee, so you haven't received the invoice for it.
That was on our budget?
That would have been in February.
Was that included on our budget for this next budget?
This next, yes, it is. We just didn't receive the invoice. Yeah.
What's the dollar amount for this service for our 2022 budget?
Right now, we have nothing decided for the 2022 other than the third of the paramedic wage.
So if
Say
I,
that again.
1/3 of the paramedic wage that we've always contributed to. That's the only thing that's budgeted for so far for the ambulance.
And what's the dollar amount on that?
38,000.
38.
Pardon me?
38,000. And my suggestion, as we had talked about this, since it didn't come in prior to the budget discussions, is for it to be paid in January of 2023 versus in the 2022 budget. So then you have a chance to look back at, the last 6 months of 2022 and see where the expenses are.
So right now, we're paying 38, I'm sorry, were you done? We're paying 38,000 now, and then with this merger, you're gonna be looking at about another 150,000, is that what it is?
so with projected numbers going for 2021, if we were to bail out for 2021, it would be 168, 161.94.
That's just estimated, and that gets billed again in 2023.
Yep.
Correct, and that 38,000 would be included in that amount.
Okay, so right now, we do have built in to the 2021, the 38,000, so I'd probably go ahead and pay the 38,000, but then for 2022, we can, include it in there or send a check separately, whatever works, because I did build the 38,000 into the
And it would be under a new
22,000.
JPA, so I'm sure.
Right, we would just combine it.
So then if this merger, we don't support this merger, it doesn't happen, then what's the outcome?
It's a good question. We're still trying to figure out options other than if this doesn't go through. We have done membership drives, we've done EMT classes. In the last year, Sue and I were talking yesterday, we've lost 8 EMTs moving out of the community in the last 10 years in Belfield.
But I mean, it could possibly mean there wouldn't be that service there, or it would get moved someplace and we would lose that service.
And maybe you could explain, so we had a meeting with Department of Health, with the State Department of Health, with the State Department of Health, and so maybe Kyle can explain if that service were to close down, what were to happen.
Yep. So North Dakota Century Code dictates what happens if an ambulance closes down. So Century Code states that it's the closest ambulance time-wise to that area. So if Belfield would close down and nobody would come in and take over the Belfield ambulance, that service area of Belfield would be split between the area ambulance services around it. So Medora would cover part of it, Dickinson would cover part of it, Mackenzie County, Killdeer, and possibly even New England would have to take over that area, which would tax a lot of these services that are already taxed, trying to find people to cover their own calls in their areas the way it is. So it's all time-wise. So if we look at it time-wise, for me to get from Medora to Belfield on a good day can be 18 to 20 minutes in my QRU. How long do we want our residents to wait for an ambulance is my question.
And so then dispatch would decide where in this area it is, and then they would decide to call Killdeer, they would call us, or they would decide on which service comes there?
If Belfield would close, yep. So the Department of Health would then do a map study to decide whose ambulance service that would be, and then it would go to the 911 coordinators and to either LEC or state radio for their paging tones in that area.
I guess.
Are you gonna be able to get more EMTs? I mean,
Right now, I have 7 EMRs in an EMR class.
Okay.
One nice thing about if we join forces, we have more volunteers over in Medora.
okay,
So hopefully we could share those volunteers over to Belfield if we merge. We have done other memberships. We have another 3 people in Belfield who are interested in joining. One other part that I've reached out to is another area entity that is getting more EMTs to try to get their new EMTs to come out to us for experience. So
So this number would fluctuate like this, the 20%, correct?
the 20% of the total budget,
Yep,
yep, would fluctuate year to year.
okay.
If we bought another ambulance or whatever, then we would be requesting more. So if you look at the 2019 budget, it was at 222, 472. Would have been 20% of that.
And that's if it would be an ambulance for that area,
So
more than likely.
the Belfield station would still be in service if this merger happens.
Correct.
I'm just for discussion and my own curiosity, who determines the boundaries of your districts?
Century code. So they do a map study of whoever is the closest ambulance time-wise, and that's who gets that area. So it's not county-based, it's not township-based, it's none of that stuff. It's time-wise, whoever is closest ambulance service gets that.
But who's in charge of doing that?
Department of Health.
Okay. And so, do you guys keep any kind of a geographical map tracking your calls?
Kind of, sort of. What exactly are you asking for?
I'm just curious if you could tell us, or maybe you already know that, how many calls for service
Yep.
in the areas identified in Stark County?
So in this yellow area, that would be a proposed new service area. So these numbers incorporate all of this proposed service area. Stark County 6-year average is 74.2 calls. Billings County 6-year average is 105 calls. Now these are just 911 calls. These do not include fire standbys, law enforcement standbys, or any other type of event standbys, strictly 911 calls into those areas. So this Stark County area, that's only 20%, is at 74.2 calls on average, on a 6-year average.
Just say that number again.
74.2.
Okay. thank you.
Billings County is at 105. So
So it's actually even more than 20%.
right
Number.
at November's numbers, Stark County is at 24% of our call volume for 2021.
So with the budget being done, sorry, Neil. With the budget being done this year, what are you, can we still get some out of general fund? We'll still pay that 38,000 that we missed, with that email that we missed. We'll cover that, correct?
That's already budgeted for, so I'm not worried about the 38,000 that was missed. But as far as we did put in 38,000 for next year for that, just for that paramedic's wage. So if we change that to whatever our new JPA is, we just have to budget for, probably to be safe, closer to 200,000 a year just to get that covered. For this coming year, I would say, since this is already done, so for 2021, so this 2021 amount you're talking would actually be paid in 2022, correct?
Correct.
Once you
Under a new JPA,
once you get the total.
correct.
Okay. So this is something that for 2022 you could, pay out of even ARPA funding or COVID funding
that.
because it's not built into the budget. That is one option. The other option is if we build it in, add it in now, we could allocate a certain, take that out of oil and gas revenue or anything like that. Our oil and gas revenue really fluctuates, but we could potentially pay for that out of there instead of. But overall, it's going to have to come from somewhere in the general. I do know that I plugged in kind of, it's not exact, but as close as I could in the redistricting software that I have to kind of see what population we're talking about that Dunn County would be taking on, and it's right around 1,700 people is what they're covering of Stark County.
Billings County.
Billings County, well, of our Stark County residents, yeah. Billings County would be servicing. This area right here in Stark County is about 1,700 people.
So currently, just flipping over on the other side of the county and trying to figure out how we finance this. Since is, I think the COVID funding, ARPA funding are or one-time expenses. I think if we're going to enter a JPA, we got to figure out a long-term solution for continuous funding. Currently, what are we levying on the eastern part of the county for the Richardson Ambulance District?
So theirs is included. So they are actual districts if you look at your ambulance district map. So anybody who is in that green area on here would be part of the Richardson Taylor Rural Ambulance. Their budget is, well, I can tell you, is significantly smaller than Billings County budget. I think overall it was like in the high 200,000 range. And so we just levy for whatever dollar amount that they submit with their budget against the residents in these block areas for Richardson Taylor. Same thing with the other areas that are covered by Hebron or covered by New England. They are also taxed on their tax statements for rural ambulance coverage.
And that's the point I'm making. Could we not, as a long-term solution to financing this JPA, levy on the area that is served in Stark County to be our portion of the funding?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. So to create an ambulance district, you have to have a vote. You have to have a petition from both taxing districts. So you'd have to have a petition from Stark County residents in that area and Billings County residents in that area. Also, to do that, Billings County Ambulance is run under the county. So it is an actual local government unit. So we aren't a 501c3 or anything like that. So there's a big difference in how the ambulance service is run. So just to give you that.
So you guys have no intention of making yours a district anyway, so
So that would essentially be double taxing our citizens as well.
If we just did it on this, I guess, I'm looking at it, we're levying tax in the Richardson Taylor District to fund the Richardson Taylor ambulance, property specific according to this map. And if we do it where we do the Belfield area, Belfield Southard area in conjunction with the Billings County ambulance, if we do a general fund expenditure on that, then we're not funding ambulance districts the same on the eastern part of the county and the western part of the county. That's my point.
So I think one thing we need to remember is that Billings County is a government entity ambulance.
Yes.
And Richardson and all other ambulances are either privately owned or owned as a non-for-profit 501c.
I understand that.
So funding gets a little bit, when you look at a taxing district and stuff, it gets a little bit hairy, put it mildly.
Well, you want to talk about double taxing, then in theory, the people who are in the Richardson Taylor Ambulance District, if we enter into a general funding approvals for this setup, they're being taxed twice because they're paying the district, the ambulance district, plus they're paying general tax for the funding of this service.
Right. So what we're using in Billings County is oil and gas revenues. We do not levy a tax for ambulance service in the county.
now our oil and gas revenue is already budgeted into kind of our estimated general fund. Like it's going forward, it was supposed to hit the general fund first, and that's how that's actually a discussion that we're going to be having anyways. Yeah, for distribution, because it is supposed to be going into the general fund and then going from there. So that is counted against what is needed for our levies. I do know that if, let's say, you talked about creating a district, if that's something that we did, how would that affect you guys in that coverage area? If, let's say, we did go ahead and
So if
work
you-
to create a district.
If you guys did a taxing district just in Stark County, you'd first have to have a petition from the residents.
Yes.
And then your taxing district would simply be your side of the county essentially. But I don't believe that you can do that because that is not the total area. I would have to look back and have the state's attorneys look at the century code on that.
Chairman. So what you're kind of saying is we cannot do that because of century code.
As far as I know, without a petition,
I do know we would have to have approval from like Belfield, so they'd have to get a petition with Belfield. It would have to get approved through the Belfield
it would
to
have to go
levy
to a
those tax
vote.
dollars.
It would have to go
Single
to a
step, you-
vote on those.
I'd have to look up the century code off the top of my head. I couldn't tell you exactly. I think it's probably quite a complicated process that I'd have to do some research in probably with, Mr. Weir before I'd be comfortable giving you a straightforward answer on it.
So it is a petition and it would have to be on the ballot, but I can't give you any more specifics after that. It would have to be on the ballot in Billings County and in Stark County.
Mr. Weir, do you have an opinion? Can you come up?
Amanda is much younger and much smarter, so I would discuss with her, but I think Marcia's right. I think it does involve a petition and probably in both counties.
A petition that would have to go to the vote, right?
I think so.
Okay.
I just think it gets a little complicated because you've got counties, they said they're a government entity. All of that, so it's not just as easy as even maybe just putting a petition out there. I mean, it's definitely gonna be some
Okay.
looking at it.
Well, and we have the 5 mills that we gave up this year we can always work with.
So on this new GPA, does that include the $38,000 or is that two separate things then?
Nope.
That would be taken out of the 168.
So currently out of the 168 that they're at right now, we would be
40,000.
130 is about what it's gonna cost the county for this coming year. And I do agree with their process of doing it, like at the end of the year, the 20%, because we don't wanna go into an agreement where we're gonna agree to 220 and then the 20% winds up only being 150,000. I'd much rather pay the
Absolutely.
150,000, so.
And that's, at the time, we can always discuss with you guys also during that budgeting time, what the upcoming budget is, if there's going to be any needs for ambulances or, additional paramedics or anything like that. So that would be a discussion in the future, during that budget time, not after the fact.
So on the eastern side, with the Richardson Taylor Ambulance Service or Richardson, whatever it's called, does that extend into the next county or that just does that end at the, I know you showed me that
Extends.
map there, but.
So this is the Richardson Taylor ambulance coverage area. I think what we're working with across the state, as far as I know, is that they don't have quite like the volunteers that they used to. And so this is a problem across the state on funding ambulances and not having that long recovery time. That's what I've been gathering from my auditor's emails. So I think that this is just gonna keep coming up and coming up until they totally redo the system. Now, did they say something about that?
So currently, there's 8 to 10 ambulance services that are struggling to survive. That's 8 to 10 ambulance services that are being open and honest with the people in their communities. If we were open and honest, we could probably add Belfield Ambulance to that list too, to make it 11. It's one of the things that we're seeing across the board is the lack of volunteers. People don't want to volunteer anymore. It doesn't matter if it's fire department, doesn't matter if it's ambulance, doesn't matter if it's your church, right? People just do not want to volunteer anymore. What we're looking at across the state is a lack of volunteers because as people get older, they no longer can handle it. Getting up at 2 a.m, going down into a ditch, doing what we do, right? People don't want to work 40 to 60 hours in the oil field and come back and carry a pager for another 2 nights or whatever is required. We don't require a pager time. We take whatever we can get from our volunteers because that's the state we're at right now. Sue and her husband are on 24/7. They're on every day of the week right now because we don't have any other choice. Because we are at that point. We are at that critical point of what happens if Sue falls down on ice out in the parking lot today and breaks her hip.
Yeah.
But if it happens, what do? We don't have any other options right now, and that's why this merger is critical for us. It allows us to share our staff, our full-time staff with Billings County, which we have 5 full-time paramedics and 2 full-time EMTs. That allows us to use those staff over in Belfield more than we currently are, more currently than the 40 hours that we currently have a paramedic. That 40 hours, let's throw that out the window because let's be honest, we're over in Belfield probably 60, 70, 80 hours a week a lot of times with that paramedic. We're also supplementing an EMT over there a lot of times because if Sue needs to go to town for groceries or whatever, she can't leave unless somebody is there. So we have to supplement another person over there. All that's coming out of our budget from Billings County.
Kyle, I had a question about you say volunteers a lot, so are you saying that they aren't paid at all?
So-
Like the
So
It
North Dakota
gets kinda
classifies
confusing.
volunteers as anybody under 10,000 annually.
okay.
So volunteers can receive a stipend in the state of North Dakota. So when we say volunteers, we are paying our volunteers.
Okay.
They get paid pager time, they get paid call time. So if we're going on a call, they get hourly pay. Otherwise, they get availability pay just to carry that pager. So it's not that we're not offering some type of compensation to these people. We are. It's just, it doesn't matter anymore.
I just wanted to clarify what we were talking about with volunteers.
They're paid
'Cause-
volunteers.
yeah, paid volunteers. Okay.
So then what does Hebron kick in for this area here? Do they kick anything in?
Yes, so that they are also an ambulance district.
Right.
And so anybody that lives in that orange area pays their portion, depending on their property value. I think they're at, I want to say like five mils or something like that. Depending on their property value and who lives there, they pay that to their ambulance.
So, I mean, that must have been for a while already. How did that get to be like that? Well, Hebron is probably not a government-owned ambulance also.
No, they're nonprofit.
Yeah, so I guess that makes a difference too.
And then the city of Belfield, they do tax,
Right.
the sales tax and the $5 on their water bills too.
So now when you were talking about the city of the Belfield pitching in, so is that included, like, does that come off? So like right now we're at 168 and we take the 38 off, 130. Does that include Belfield's contribution or no?
Nope.
Okay, so that's above and that's not including that. Okay. I was just checking.
In that Belfield, the way I understand, that's for the building and the heat and all that, correct?
So yeah, right now, Belfield currently pays for the building.
Yep.
All the heat, all the maintenance, the water, all utilities in that building. They pay for all the insurance on the trucks. The insurance of all of our supplies in the building is all paid for by Belfield. They pay for the third of a paramedic, and then the $5 on the water bill, a sales tax.
So that's where all that money pretty much goes to, though, is like all of that stuff, all of that stuff?
Nope. So the building is separate. So
Okay.
so right now, Belfield Ambulance gets the sales tax money, and the 5% or the $5 goes to Billings County to pay off the building.
Okay.
Billings County has a loan.
So how come the sales tax money from Belfield wouldn't go towards the overall amount that would be coming from Stark County?
Because that's what we're requesting from the city of Belfield. So we're requesting a separate amount from the city of Belfield, a separate amount from the Stark County, a separate amount from Medora. All the people that we serve, we're asking for what we figured out to be a fair share.
The city of Medora they budgeted for next year 220,000.
Okay.
Southard, how do they?
We're still working with South Hart trying to make some type of an agreement.
Do you cover all of South Hart?
Yes.
Like the entire
Yep.
city?
So our Belfield line goes 1 mile east of South Hart. So where the new housing development is out of South Hart there, that's in Belfield territory. The man camp is in Dickinson.
So if South Hart does, if you can come to some sort of agreement with South Hart, that would bring everybody else's portions down too, then,
Hopefully.
potentially, yeah.
Eventually.
I think contingent on the JPA, I mean, we have to move forward with this.
Absolutely. Question, so on the merger coverage area, include South there, Belfield, and you include the Marathon Gas Plant, isn't that more than a mile east of South Art?
Different one. The one south of Belfield.
You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not in the news all the time?
Right. So we do see a lot of oil and gas traffic on 85. We do see a lot of oil gas traffic on the South Hart Road. We do see a lot of oil and gas traffic in our area in general. That's why we are requesting to look at the oil and gas revenue instead of a taxing district or something of that sort, just because of the amount of oil traffic and oil industry we have in the western part of the county.
So could we potentially approve the merger and then get that portion of the equation done, and then let us figure out the funding mechanism, whether it comes from COVID, whether it comes from general fund, those kind of things? Is that a
I think we
path that
still
we
have,
can move this forward?
we still have to agree though that we're going to do, yeah, I mean, with the JPA, I would assume we'd still have to agree to the amount and then we can go forward with the funding mechanism.
That's my
Is that-
point,
is
that's
that
what I
you're
said.
thinking?
is
COVID money, this year COVID money is there, it might not be there in the future, so I mean, we can't
That's,
stay relying on that.
And we would come back at your next budget, preliminary budget hearings or discussions and make that presentation for 2023 also. Or 2024, I should say.
Because by August, you would have some kind of, you have some kind of estimate.
Right. And the state's attorneys would be able to work together and make sure we have a
Yeah,
JPA.
and Attorney Ware has sent me over a rough draft of a JPA already, and it's a good start. I mean, I think it's pretty much all there. The JPA is essentially just to work out the legal, or the legalities that say we're gonna pay Billings an amount that we agree to for consideration of their services, so.
We make this into a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the merger between between Stark County, the Belfield Ambulance, and Medora. According, contingent on the JPA.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Is that GPA also include language in regards to Billings County? Not just
So
ambulance?
The
and-
JPA would actually be between Billings County and Stark County.
Okay.
Yep.
I wanted to clear that up. It's not,
And Attorney Ware and I will work on that and get the fine details worked out, and then we can present it to the commissions, both of our commissions for approval.
Who's the contact for South Hart that you were talking to? Or do you have a contact or?
We started the conversation and then the conversation ended and we tried to pick it up again and then we had people out sick and COVID sickness, and so it's been a process to get all of this going because of.
Who was your main contact?
So if you have anybody you would like to
Or-
suggest.
We were in talk with the auditor over there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Commissioner Arthod.
Aye.
Commissioner Marsh.
Aye.
Commissioner Zander.
aye.
Commissioner Messer.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Bernie, were you the second one?
You're welcome. Okay, next, which we want to go?
Well, I thought we were now.
Start at the top of the list.
Sorry.
Huh?
Want to start at the top of the list or? how we
Yeah,
do?
that's what I figured, and you would just decide
Okay,
how much you aren't or tabling.
okay, next we'll move then back to their agenda for the CARE Acts, funding requests that we're considering.
First one is for Sanford Complex. Is there discussion on that?
So, before that, so now we have these current fund balances that we have on our paper here.
Yes.
Are we gonna take what we just agreed with over here with, Billings County and subtract that from one of those two balances, or what are we gonna do?
I think
No, I don't.
we have a couple options. I think we should kind of build it into our general fund budget and
Yes.
not necessarily go off of this, but for this coming amount,
For this coming year?
yes, for this coming year, I would actually, when I was going through the funding, there wound up what I thought was election reimbursement funding is actually more CARES Act funding. So we do have a little bit of a buffer in there, and I'm trying to get a total balance for that because I was trying to figure out why we have more in there than what I have listed. So we could potentially pay it out of that, and that's not even listed.
Yeah, because I just wanna watch when we're going down through the amounts we requested, and what our balances are, if this should be coming out of there, or where we should be watching that at.
Well, I think since this is gonna be an ongoing and recurring expense, I think we gotta figure out how to put it in the
It
budget.
will be, I
Right,
agree with you.
Right.
But I'm just saying for this next year, are we gonna be looking at one of these funding sources? Because our general budget for next year is already done, and we dropped our mills, so we're gonna be looking at some other problems there.
Yeah. I think we have enough flexibility in the budget to cover hundred
right,
and
that's- I just
sixty-eight thousand,
wanted
but I mean, I'll,
Well, it won't,
Basically, what I was
Commissioner,
saying, Bernie, is that what I thought was election COVID money is actually more CARES Act money. And so, but I need to take all of the reimbursements from the election side out. So we will wind up, and that's what at the end of the year, when I balance completely, we will end up with another, well, after all those amounts come out and the approval for the website changes, we will wind up with another 200-ish thousand in CARES Act money that could be used to cover the
right.
ambulance for this coming year,
Just-
if that helps.
Yep.
Okay. Any other discussion? Then we move on then to the first, the one on the list is the Sanford Complex. Any discussion on that? They're requesting $500,000.
I think this is something that should be contingent on their JPA also. I would like to see the JPA that's written between the college and Stark County and the surrounding counties. But I still would approve that amount contingent on the JPA. Is my opinion.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, when I look at all of these requests, I look at this request from the complex, and I would say that well, every one of them are a good cause, and I mean, I would personally support all of them, but this complex, I think, brings more to the community as far as, the popular things to say, quality of life, and I look at it as also a revenue generator for the city, especially under the sales tax and the hotels and so forth. And so I would agree with Commissioner Arthod's request to see what your GPA is going to be.
Well, I want to just step in and make a distinction on that. So the difference, I
Just a
think.
second.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'd also like to get some assurances that, like this, and I'm just going to use South Art and Belfield school districts, that this facility is available to them and that there would be no fees attached to it for those school districts that might want to have a function. And so I'd kind of like to see some commitment on the part of you gentlemen back there. And like I said, I support the project and I support the funding request.
Mr. Fridley, could I speak with you a little bit? Or either one, or Pete?
Come on up to
Both
the
come
mic.
up, yeah.
And just real quickly on the MOU part of it, that is in work with James Kramer and President Easton, myself, and the Dickinson Public Schools to get that together, and it'll be some of the similar things that we're doing with the BAC
Would that,
right now.
would that stuff be included in your joint powers of agreement or anything like that?
So that's what I was gonna, there's a difference. A joint powers agreement is essentially we're giving them money or someone's giving you money. You're entering into joint powers to do something. This would be a memorandum of understanding saying, we're gonna give you $500,000 or whatever it is. And in turn, we come in with the understanding that you're going to allow the school districts to use this for free. You know, legally, there's just a difference of it. So just so that's clear for everyone. I
How
guess.
far are you out on your JPA or memorandum of understanding?
We are just in the works with it right now. James is the one that's, James Kramer is the one that's heading
Okay.
that portion of it. And he and President Easton are working that right now. I don't think it would take a long time to get that together. I'm not sure what you think on that, Guy, but I think it'd be.
Very similar to what we
to
talked
what we-
about with the BAC. So the framework's already there for us. We just need to adjust a few things just because obviously it's a couple different entities that will be using that facility compared to the BAC. So.
I mean, I knew that you were gonna respond that way, but I just, for the public record, wanna make sure that, that we ask those questions and that they're addressed, so, thank you.
So, and then you guys told us this last meeting, but how much is the city putting into this?
We've requested $1 million from the city.
And how much did they agree to?
Right now with that amount. That would be we're self to apply for that, and it appears to be in January for that amount.
So, just a quick comment. So, according to our own information, we have $782,000 left of the 2021 ARPA funding. I look at the 5 requests that are in front of us, and the 2 that stick out that I would personally support the most would be the Sanford Complex and Friendship Park. The request for those 2 alone exceed what we have available in 2021. And the others, we'd have to either approve, deny a portion, or whatever it is. So I guess my point, part of the discussion today, I think should be collectively how we look at this rather than individually. Put in a motion or in action where we combine one or more projects and not to exceed that 782.
Well, what you'll recall, I didn't make a motion
Okay.
to provide the 500. I said I support that. And I think that once we go through our list today, then we can make a motion based on our judgments individually as to which of these 5 we will fund 100% of their request, maybe just a small portion of their request. That's how I view it.
I agree.
And the reason, like, for me, I was asking about the JPA or any of that, but that was way back. I mean, it worked different, like with the indoor out there, it's like, that wasn't very open to the public. And with this complex, I just want to make sure, and I know it's different people, whole different.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing with the BAC right now as well.
Yep.
And Commissioner Marsh, I misspoke. $1 million. With the city request was 1.5 million.
And they're
that
giving
was
you $1
not-
million?
Not 1 million. It's 1.5.
And they're agreeing to that?
Yes. That is in the city budget. We have some steps that we have to take, and it sounds like that'll be in January where that'll be awarded.
Well, and I'm just a point to make that the city should be stepping up to that effect as they have a funding source in place for that particular purpose. And I don't want to get into it. And good for them. And those businesses that will see the greatest benefit financially from this are, again, are paying a tax towards that city fund. So,
CVB.
thank you.
To go off of you, Ms. Arthod, yours, the facility will be open up during the day, so it's not like there's gonna be gates locked off. So all of our communities can come in during the day and utilize the facility, just like North Complex or Crest Complex right now. The only one that we anticipate locking off is the stadium portion where there's a lot more,
Yeah,
you know, things that I'll say can be damaged or whatever. But
yeah.
other than that, the soccer and the other 3 softball fields will be come in and utilize.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Well, I think what then, Chairman, do we want to just go down the list and see what we approve where and then make the final decisions at the end?
That's fine. However you guys want to proceed with it. it's fine.
I think that's a good idea.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.